They gave him $75 million, a Tesla, and a mansion on the hill. Cameras flashed. People cheered, and I stood in the shadow, invisible until a stranger pressed an envelope into my hand and whispered, "This was always meant for you." The stadium roared with applause. Flashing lights bounced off polished marble floors. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones tilted toward the man of the hour, Daniel. The younger brother, crowned overnight with wealth, fame, and admiration. A giant check glittered under the spotlights. $75 million. Beside it, keys to a gleaming Tesla. And behind them, a set of papers to a sprawling mansion with glass walls that touched the sky. But just a few steps away, near the back of the crowd, stood Michael. Older brother, same blood, same history. Yet no one asked his name. No cameras turned his way. He clapped, quietly, forcing a smile as pride wrestled with a loneliness too heavy to hide. Then came the moment that would change everything. A stranger, tall, gray coat, steady eyes slipped through the crowd, brushed past the bodyguards, and placed a simple brown envelope into Michael's hand. His whisper was calm, almost reverent. "This was always meant for you." The world slowed. The roar of applause became distant. Michael's fingers trembled around the envelope, and in that instant, an old wound, long buried, reopened. Michael and Daniel were sons of a man who believed in silence more than words. Their father, a mechanic, worked under the sun with cracked hands that smelled of oil and iron. Their mother stitched clothes at night by candlelight, her fingers pricked raw by needles. Michael, the eldest, carried responsibility early. At 12, he walked Daniel to school barefoot, so his younger brother's shoes would last longer. At 16, he left his own studies to work double shifts, sliding heavy crates in a warehouse, so Daniel could chase his dreams without worry. His shoulders carried the weight of two futures, his brothers, and the one he silently sacrificed. Daniel had talent, sharp, undeniable talent. He was brilliant with numbers, ideas, inventions, but it was Michael's unseen labor, the coins saved from sleepless nights, the notebooks bought with calloused hands, that paved Daniel's path. No one saw Michael wiping sweat from his face behind factory gates. No one heard his quiet prayers when he handed over his last paycheck for Daniel's university fees. To the world, Daniel was self-made. But to Michael, he was brother-made. And now, standing in that crowded hall of celebration, Michael wondered if sacrifice always ended in silence. As Daniel shook hands with officials and posed for photos, journalists painted him as a visionary, a lone genius who pulled himself from nothing into greatness. The words stung from nothing. Michael felt like a ghost haunting a story he himself had written. Bystanders noticed the older brother in the shadows, but said nothing. Their silence wasn't cruel, it was worse. It was indifference. The system loved the spotlight and had no room for the quiet sacrifices hidden behind it. And then the envelope. Still pressed in Michael's palm, its weight grew heavier by the second, not of paper, but of truth waiting to be revealed. Michael's breath tightened as he slipped out of the crowd. Alone in the dim hallway, he stared at the envelope. His heart pounded with suspicion. Was it a cruel joke, a mistake, or a secret finally surfacing? Inside the envelope was a letter, written in their father, Isso and Evan hand. The smell of engine grease lingered faintly on the page, as if the words themselves had been penned between long hours under a broken car hood. It read, "To my eldest son, Michael, if you are reading this, I am gone. I leave no mansion, no millions, no luxury. I leave you something greater. My respect, my gratitude, my faith. You carried burdens no child should carry. You gave without asking, and though the world may forget you, I never did." Inside this envelope is a key not to wealth, but to something that was always yours. Attached was a small brass key, old and unpolished. Michael's knees weakened. For years, he had searched for meaning in his sacrifices. And here, In his father's shaky script, he found the recognition he had long been denied. But the tension was far from over, because as Michael turned the key over in his palm, a voice interrupted. "Michael, what did he give you?" It was Danielle standing in the hallway, eyes filled with curiosity and maybe fear. Michael could have spoken. He could have shouted decades of hidden truths. He could have demanded gratitude, demanded recognition, demanded repayment, but he didn't. He closed his fist gently around the key and slipped the letter back into the envelope. His silence was not weakness, it was strength. He met his brother's gaze and said, "Only some treasures are not for sharing." Daniel searched his brother's face, confused, unsettled. For the first time, the younger brother felt the shadow of the man who had carried him all these years. Later that evening, during the celebration dinner, Daniel stood to give a speech. He thanked investors, colleagues, but then his eyes landed on Michael, sitting quietly at the far end of the hall. Something shifted. A realization, heavy and unavoidable. Daniel said. The room hushed, and with a voice trembling yet steady, he confessed, "I stand here today because someone believed in me long before the world did. Someone who gave up his dream so I could chase mine. That person is my brother, Michael, the truest man I know." Gasps spread across the room. Cameras turned, at last, toward the older brother. Applause rose like a wave, not for wealth or genius, but for sacrifice and scene. Uncelebrated. Until now, Michael's father's letter had said, "Though the world may forget you, I never did." Michael himself had spoken, "Some treasures are not for sharing." And Daniel's confession became the night's final echo. Greatness is never self-made. It is brother-made, mother-made, father-made. It is sacrifice made flesh. The cameras that once ignored Michael now captured his quiet dignity. Guests rose from their chairs in respect. Some placed hands on their hearts. Even the officials who had praised Daniel now nodded toward Michael, acknowledging the invisible pillar beneath the celebrated man. And in his pocket, Michael still held the brass key. What it unlocked didn't matter. What mattered was that, for the first time, I understood his sacrifices had not vanished into the void. They had shaped history. That night ended not with the shine of Teslas or mansions, but with a brother's tearful embrace, and a silent man's honor finally spoken aloud. Respect, after all, is worth more than riches. Recognition, given too late, is still recognition. And silent strength, the kind that carries others without applause, may be the purest form of greatness. How many unseen Michaels walk among us? How many sacrifices pass unnoticed, unthanked, unremembered? Perhaps today, you might look closer at a parent, a sibling, a friend, and whisper the gratitude the world forgot. Because sometimes the quietest heroes are the ones who deserve the loudest applause. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments side. Love to know who your Michael is. And if you believe in honoring silent strength, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us of the battles fought in the shadows.